Paul was speaking and he said, not slothful in business, but fervent in spirit, giving praise to God. Here the Bible is saying that when you're slothful, there are people that are great wasters, and we will be one of them if we are slothful in the way we work, okay? So let me start this by telling you a short story. This was, it's been a long time, right? This was about several years ago, about 7-8 years thereabout. Yeah, about 8 years ago. I and my family, we relocated to a different city. And when we got to that city, I was actually kind of looking for, I had been running a business in the previous city where I was, and coming here, I didn't really understand the dynamics of transferring that business to the new city, and so I felt it wouldn't work because I didn't know where to get the product, source the product, package the product. There had to be a lot, that went into running that business. And so I decided to go back into employment. Not paid employment as it were, but commissioned jobs, okay, because that was the fastest I could get. I did later get into paid employment, and of course later left again, but that's a whole different story for another day. But when I got into this employment, into a commissioned job, it was a sales job. So I did look around at the work ethics of my newfound colleagues. And because I had been in a sales job before I got into business, previously I had actually been in a sales job, still commissioned, which was very similar to what I was doing then. And I remember the work ethic then. We would wake up early, we would go out for presentations on a daily basis, and we're actually making sales, after some months or weeks of being on the job. But when I came here, it was a completely different atmosphere. I noticed that my colleagues were laid back. They would sit down. They were salespeople, but they would spend we would always see people in the office. It's like they would just dress on their suits, look good, just to leave their houses, right? And then they would come to the office. If there were no meetings that day, they would spend a large amount of the time talking, chatting, scrolling on social media. There was so much laxity with the way they were going. And I knew that I couldn't, of course, when I first came in, I was being looked down on as the new person, green. And I wasn't, they felt, of course, they were more experienced at that point than I was. But their work ethic was so bad that I decided to outwork everyone I knew then. And I was so hungry to be the best, to perform. And I began to go out on a daily basis. I was listening, I started reintroducing myself back into sales training. I was listening to sales training on my way to work, on my way back from work, at home. I was developing myself. I was taking courses on sales. And while that was going on after work hours, during work hours, I was going from office to office, selling, at the beginning, of course, I was making mistakes because I was green, of course. But with time, in the space of 6 months, I began to close deals. It did take me about 3 months to close my first deal. But once I hit that first deal, I tell you the truth, I started closing, in short, the first deal was not just the first deal. It was 5 deals at the same time, around that end of the month, after 3 full months of not closing anything, even though I was putting in the work on a daily basis. And as I'm saying this to you, I'm saying it also to encourage myself, because I had to wait 3 months to see results. But once it started coming in month after month, there were months in which I would close 10 deals, 12 deals, 15 deals, consecutively, month after month. My pipeline was full. I was putting, and guess what? Within 1 year of having joined that organization, I actually won the award for, first runner up, best marketer in the region. And when I was being told, I couldn't even believe it. How? We are not talking about, in this office in the state or the city where I am. You're talking in the region. The region is made up of about 6 to 7, at least 8 to 9 cities, right? and I was the best marketer, first runner up. And actually I got the award. I actually got the award and got a cash prize also to go with it. My line manager got a cash prize at being the best manager or this best marketer. Even one of our senior managers, okay, at that time in the agency did get a cash prize also. And it was just because of me. And I was actually as surprised as the others. And then, of course, everyone around started looking at me like, wow, she's hot. People wanted to work with me. People wanted me to work with them. People asked to partner with me. Everything suddenly changed. I was no longer being looked down on like the green, just the green, that person that just came out of the blue and, oh, she's fresh out, she's new. There were several other people, okay? They actually had some deals they were closing, but not as regularly as I was closing. And you had a lot of people who were closing deals, but had a lot of inconsistent income, not just because it was a sales job, but because their work ethic was really bad, okay? Like I had said in the beginning, how they would sit around, chat. It was, I did enjoy the chatting once in a blue moon, but I hardly, took out time to partake in it. In short, there were times when if meetings would go on for too long, I would look for how to slide out of the meeting and go do some sales calls, okay? But my point is that when the Bible does say, I was trying to use this story to illustrate what the Bible means by when you waste time, when you're slothful in business, you're actually wasting time. And when you're wasting time, you actually won't get the results. Maybe if you have put in enough effort, you're supposed to advance much further in your work. If it's in sales, which I'm used to, you should have made maybe that month, you should have closed 10 deals. You end up closing one. So you don't get the money from the 10 deals, right? So you're exactly at the same level with someone that closed 10 deals and wasted the money on spending sprees, going out, unnecessarily, just wasteful spending, okay? You just got one deal and now you're pinching the money, pinching the cash, checking ticking off every expense you make, checking everything. Of course, you should check your expenses, right? Very important in financial and management principles, okay? But now you're very careful and you feel you're being careful with cash. However, the Bible says you are the brother to that person that got the 10 deals but blew out the cash. You that got the one deal because you were slack in your work, because you were slow in business, you were slothful in business, you weren't serious with your work, you spent the time gisting, watching movies, scrolling on social media just because you felt, okay, after all, I'm being paid according to what I work. That's just an illustration. There are a lot of people in fully paid employment that are being paid salaries and just whiling away time, okay? Even if your job isn't keeping you that busy or your business isn't keeping you that busy, you can spend that time in self-development. What stops you from using the same phone you're using to scroll on social media, endlessly scrolling, doom scrolling to actually develop a skill, learn a skill and build upon yourself? So I hope with that brief story, I've been able to illustrate, to break down what that Bible verse is talking about. Do you have any experience in which you worked, as hard as you could during that time frame and you saw exceptional results? Or do you have any time in which you were slothful in business and you saw poor results? Or at least you know of someone that did that? Please leave a comment below. Would like to hear from you. And I would encourage you to watch out for weekly videos every Sunday. Every Sunday evening, we'll be putting out a video there for you so you could watch on a biblical business principle that if I practice, because as I'm speaking to you, I'm also speaking to myself, that if I practice, if you practice, if we practice, we're going to become the best that we can be. So if you've gotten any value at all from this video, don't forget to leave a like, to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and even to share to someone who might need this video. And you be great right where you are, doing lots of great things with God's help, of course. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.